Welcome in. I have just completed fueling of the aircraft and currently boarding passengers. I hope you enjoy the flight. This is from Budapest to Prague. It's a lovely day at Budapest. We are expecting some overcast weather and rain on arrival. Approximate flight time is 1 hour 30 minutes. We'll go ahead and resume that right now. We haven't actually departed the gate or the terminal just yet. I don't know how actually accurate that's going to be. We have 356 souls on board, 8 members of crew, 90 members in first class, 56 business and 273 in economy. We're loaded up on fuel, so we're very heavy. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got the APU running. We've done all the electrics and the hydraulics and the air system, the main systems and an aircraft of course. So go ahead and click start. We should be waiting for the aircraft's M2 to reach 20%, at which point we can go ahead and initiate the fuel flow. Turn fuel flow on. We have an active N1. Wait for that to climb. Go ahead and turn everything else on. Saying there's a fault, the engines are still starting. Go ahead and stick our taxi lights on. And I think that's about us done. We have got a bit of an error, they've just gone off. All systems clear, lights prepared. Go back onto handy viewer and click captain's seat. We are now ready to taxi. We can probably just follow the other aircraft. If you didn't see before, I have got the route programmed into the route manager, which is this little computer down here. We can go ahead and put our identity in as well. We are flight number Golf Sierra Tango Bravo Alpha. So we put that in. Golf Sierra Tango Bravo Alpha, into the flight number. We're departing runway 13 right. We can select our heading. First of all, we want to change the speed up to 250 for our departure, and change this 13. Could take a while. I will just do that instead. Flight director can come on. We can give a little bit of an external view. I'm not going to be looking outside the aircraft too much. It's not very realistic. Everything's checked. The area is clear. Our fuel and our engines are ready to go. Fuel pump's good. A lot of Ryanair in Budapest. Alright, let's go. I hope you enjoy the flight. It should be about an hour. Approximately there, an hour and a half to account for the landing and takeoff. So I have to say Europe, or flying in Europe at least, is one of my favourite locations. The 777 comes alive. Extended range, 300 extended range, that's what the ER stands for. Very loud and a very big aircraft. Will be one of the biggest aircraft ever built. And one of the main users is British Airways. Along with aircraft operators like the Airbus. Go ahead and stick one notch of flaps. Use the tiller. This is what this handle is. The tiller steering gives you control of the nose wheel when you're on the ground. For taxiing, for other things, when you're on the runway during takeoff and landing, you usually use the rudder. You wouldn't bother with the tiller steering, otherwise you'll end up all over the place. Fantastic day to be flying. Okay, we want 13 right, so we're heading 13 now. We need to be heading to the left. I haven't got an airport diagram, probably could do with one. All I know is we're following the Ryanair aircraft that's in front of us. Just making sure my environment's clear, that there's no other aircraft here. The taxi lines have actually been covered by what looks like snow. I'm assuming that this white stretch of land here is the driveway for the aircraft vehicles and other maintenance. That would make sense. And then you would turn into the taxi, down the taxi line into the parking space. Unfortunately, Budapest on Flightgear doesn't really have a developed airport. There's no jetways. I was going to depart 13 right, but if I had have done, I probably would have crashed. I would have ended up crashing because that aircraft seems to be taking off on not 13 right, but on the opposite runway, so the other end. Which means I can do my departure from the same runway. I'm not too familiar, I'm not using the ATC as you can tell, but I'm not too familiar with whether or not Flightgear initiates and utilises a real world airport departure schedule. We are lined up for 31 left though. I mean that's good enough. That's good enough for me. Go ahead and stop. Clear. That aircraft's in the air. Taxiing down now for 1. Got another aircraft in the background parked up. Right, I do think this is probably an acceptable thing to do. The game should realise I'm on the runway. We can't just go straight out, so we're going to be putting our landing lights on. And our other lights, strobes, all go on for takeoff. We're on 3-1 left, we should be on right, but considering that we're all taking off from this one, it makes more sense. Should have been on runway 13, my mistake. Ah well. Here we go. V1, rotate. Picking up speed, we have a positive rate, we can bring the gear up. Trim it a little bit. We should have had our auto throttles on, that's fine, we could just select that now. And it should select the correct speed for us. Lateral navigation switched on, but it's not engaged on the autopilot. The auto throttle system is actually separate to the entire autopilot system. It can be used on its own. Retract 1 set of flaps. Prepare to make our left-hand turn. We'll go ahead and just check our we haven't crossed the checkpoint for our route manager, so as you can see it's automatically skipped to it for us. You're supposed to come out here 13 right and then make a right turn onto our departure route. We can just go straight up to 28,000. retracting all the flaps, and just keeping that nose about 12 to 15 degrees in pitch. Breaking through the Budapest clouds is magic. The weather on this game, fantastic. You have real METAR real METAR data coming in, so you have real world weather, and it's the same time as Budapest. As you can tell, our clock on the aircraft is 1:48 p.m. This little dial in the corner, this will tell you what time it is, local time. Landing lights come off. We've got the flaps retracted. Auto throttle set. We need to set the altimeter. We should have done that before we departed. So we click on airport weather down here. 30.28, 24 inches. Go up to the pressure 3028. 24. My memory's not with me. As you can see, I'm in total control of the aircraft other than the throttle, and it's very, very steady. It's like flying a Rolls Royce. I find it amazing. Flightgear, the game, available on the web for free download. The aircraft is a add-on, but it's completely free. Doesn't take up less. It takes up less than a gigabyte of space on your computer, probably less than 200 megabytes. It's a fantastic game, fantastic vehicle, aircraft, and provides so much joy and entertainment. Considering look at the detail. I think this is better than the 737. It's much more powerful. Okay, now we're departing 13,500 for flight level 280. We're going to go ahead and engage the autopilot, but first of all we're going to change this altitude setting to 28,000. Click autopilot, and it should now take us onto our route. If it doesn't, we can disengage it and fly the aircraft ourselves. We're going to go at 2 to maybe 3,000 feet a minute. As you can see, the autopilot system, when I had the lateral navigation switch engaged and the auto throttle engaged, I clicked autopilot and it automatically followed our route, which we have programmed in our route manager. If we go onto our computer's flight monitor, we're about to see, yes, that's correct, our aircraft is a Boeing 777-300 extended range, British Airways, call sign Golf Sierra Tango Bravo Alpha. We're active. We haven't really got this programmed, but we have put it into the altimeter. As you can see down there, we've changed our pressure settings to 30.24 inches. LKPR is Prague Airport, with an ETA of about 40 minutes. I'll go ahead and change the clock on screen for you. $50 minutes to account for any issues, to account for the landing and takeoff, go rounds. I believe the airport of Prague is an ILS approach. As we approach 28,000 feet, our aircraft being engaged with the autopilot and having its lateral navigation engaged, its auto throttle and its altitude will level off at 28,000 feet, as you can see. So it switches from the vertical speed, and when it reaches the height at 28,000, which it has, we engage, or we let the autopilot engage the altitude setting, so it'll hold that level. If you want to change height, I did go into this in a little bit of detail in my last video, but some people seem to be misunderstood, particularly on the 777 and on Flightgear and Microsoft Flight Simulator and any other game you've played with the aircraft. So when it's on autopilot and when you've engaged something, it will be ready to use on autopilot, provided you've got the right route and you're following the right speed and the height and etc. If it's engaged, it'll be on this little screen in white. That means it's engaged, ready to use. It doesn't mean it's going to be working. It doesn't mean the aircraft is going to be following it itself. However, when it changes to green like this, speed is green, lateral navigation is green, and altitude is green. That means that all three of these are engaged and active. It means they're being utilised by the aircraft. The aircraft is now controlling our speed. We have a speed setting in. Autothrottle's been armed the entire flight. 320 knots is our target cruise speed. As you can see, green, it means it's been held. Our altitude 28,000, again green, and lateral navigation, which will follow the route we have programmed into our computer. If they're not green and they're not showing up, it either means, like I've just done, accidentally push the controls and it'll go off. If it's not green and it's not following the path you want, either the lateral navigation isn't selected, the altitude isn't selected, or anything else, and the autopilot won't be engaged. You need it to have A/P on the indicator in order to show you whether it's working or not. Otherwise you're going to be sat there with a plane which you're flying with white standby colours, and you won't realise, perhaps if you're coming for a landing, that that's not actually doing it for you. So yeah, always keep an eye on your autopilot status and what you have selected, because you might end up crashing otherwise. Since this is a relatively short flight, I might as well talk you through some of the things we're going to do now. Somebody asked me how we can determine the decision height at which point we will start to descend. I use decision height very loosely there. That's actually not what it means. Decision height is usually the height at which you determine whether you're going to go round or not when you're landing. So when I say in this case, I'm referring to the fact that we're going to make a decision about what point we're going to start to descend below 28,000 feet. If we go back onto our autopilot, as mentioned previously, we have our route programmed in. Now, when it's programmed in, it will give you these, usually if you select the correct approach, like there, 30 default approach, it would give you a list of headings and altitudes at which you have to fly in order to line up with the approach and localizer. So when we are going down from 28,000 feet, which is our current flight level, we're going to be wanting to descend below 5,200 feet by the time we get to this checkpoint. So since this is a short flight, we can, as you can see, we're already almost halfway there. If we zoom into our target destination, which is Prague, we're going to be landing on runway 30. I'm just going to program that into the ILS now. So what we do is you go into navigation, we put our ILS number in, 109.5. That will line us up, and this will light a light blue colour when it's engaged, when we get into the vicinity. Anyway, it's a category 1 runway, that's fine. We're going to be coming in, by the looks of it, we're not going to be on the glide slope, but when we get down, when we're descending below, down from 28,000 feet, below 5,200 feet, we want to be below 5,200 feet by the time we get to this one, 30-12. That's our target level, target destination and target level. If we're not below it, we're going to be too high. If we are way below it, if we're below 3,200, that's alright, I guess. We'll be prepared to intercept the glide slope. But again, if we're not, we're going to have some issues. The glide slope and the path I have predicted here isn't lining up, so it might be that I might have to fly the aircraft manually and land it manually, because we are flying on an, I believe, a VFR flight. And in fact, it doesn't seem to be lined up with any runway whatsoever. It just seems to be the ILS and the route manager are proposing that there's no runway there. So I think this could be a real manual approach, which is not the worst thing. It just means we'll have to start to really think hard when we get there whether we're going to try and avoid that if it's a runway at all. It's saying it is. I think the ILS approach is off. I think this runway here is 30. In which case, devs, for your next update, please fix that, and please also fix the fact that the AI aircraft are all over the place on the taxiway. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it seems we are near landing. I appreciate the fact you've had to stay in your seats the entire flight. This is such a short flight, it wasn't going to take anywhere near an hour. We are almost going to be descending. We could probably start descending now. We're going to be well ahead of schedule. And thank you for maintaining your trust in British Airways. Thank you for flying on the 777. I'm Grantham. We're going to continue on to Prague, and it's looking slightly overcast with the possibility of rain. Thank you very much. A huge blunder. I left the APU running. I hope the airline does not sue me for that. I'm very, very sorry. So even though the autopilot and the heading and altitude are engaged, at present we're going to change the altitude on the panel. We're going to change that to 20,000. You can see the aircraft isn't moving, and that's because the last programmed altitude was 28,000. So we need to click on FLCH, which is flight level change, in order to initiate a descent. We might be able to do a vertical speed, but for now we're going to let the aircraft determine its descent rate itself. If it's too steep, we'll decrease it. If it's not enough, we'll increase it. So we click flight level change. As you can see, the vertical speed indicator is now decreasing and going down and telling us we're descending at whatever rate the aircraft is determined. It seems to be a very steep descent. Okay, 4,000. Very, very steep descent there by the 777. Almost 5,000 feet per minute. We're going to go ahead and decrease that and descend at a rate of 3,500 feet per minute to a level of approximately 15,000 feet in preparation for our intersection with the localizer. As I say, the flight time on this is extremely short, so even a flight level 280 seems excessive. ETA 13 minutes. Czech Republic and Prague are looking very clear at the moment. Very clear to land. Hopefully by the time we get down to a lower level we'll be able to see the ground at the airport. If you take a look out your window on the left or the right, you may see Prague as we approach. The familiar canals, the familiar churches, castles. It's really a fairy tale city in Eastern / Middle Europe. Fantastic place to visit. We're going to go ahead and start descending a little bit more. We have a 69 nautical mile radius, distance to go. We can zoom that in or click on it, and it might be a little bit easier just to give us a better view of it. If we click on plan, that will show us our predicted landing path. Go to VOR and ILS, that should lock onto 109.5. Go on map and just confirm that we have the right ILS in. 109.5 for runway 30. Keep the map transparent so I can see what I'm doing. Might want to check the local weather as well. So we go back over to the computer system, airport info, and it should lock on or give us the rendition of the recent weather for the local airport. Recent weather, I don't know how recent that'll be. It is supposed to be live, so you'd expect it to be instant, but because it's a computer online we can expect some difference in time. Relative humidity 40, so it's dry, very dry and cold by the looks of it. 30.24 inches. You can just tell by looking outside there's tons of snow still. We are in February, it's been a particularly harsh winter. Now, let's just enjoy our descent. So we're going to go ahead and select 10,000 feet, flight level change, and we are going to start to decrease our speed once we're within a 20, when we're in range basically. Go back to plan, map, decrease that descent rate to 2,200. We're going to click VOR L approach, and as you can see on the screen it's come up with it on the bottom left. So if we now select VOR on here, it's the same as the ILS. The UMI is the same. VOR on approach. The same frequency, not necessarily always the same. Because it's a flight simulator, so don't expect to take any of this into the real world with you. Don't expect to fly 777 fully loaded with approximately a shed ton of fuel and expect to land without issues. We are going to have to decrease our speed quite considerably on this landing. Probably going to have to do a very, very slow approach in order to slow down in time. Thank you to anyone watching as well. I really hope you're enjoying this flight. I'm loving it, loving every minute. 777 and Flightgear is one of my favourite aircraft. It's an add-on, but it's completely free, just like the gamers. You want to save yourself some money and you want a flight simulator, then I highly recommend Flightgear. Okay, now we need to start slowing down. We've reached the sort of threshold for 250 knots, which is 10,000 feet. We're going to want to bring the aircraft back to 250 knots. We'll go ahead and select that on the autothrottle system. 250, 250. and we're going to decrease our altitude. We need to be below 5,200 feet, otherwise we're going to be too high. As mentioned earlier on, with an ETA of about 7 minutes. Decreasing to 6,000 feet. Flight level change. (1,500 feet per minute descent). We have an ETA of 6 minutes, so if we just go at 1,000 feet a minute, it would take us 6 minutes to get to our target height. Go ahead and decrease the speed to 240. You want to be at the approach speed. Approach speed should be about 240 in the 777. Confirm we are in fact on track. We aren't really receiving any intel or information from the localizer just yet. We are way too far. 32 nautical miles. We're going to go ahead and lower some flaps as we approach Prague airport. Amazing detail on these clouds. This is realistic weather. This is maximum settings. Usually average about 60 frames per second, but that's typical for a flight simulator. It can look great, but it can only run at like 60 frames, which is absolutely fine. I think any more than that and you're asking for a bit of computer issues. Okay, 1 notch of flaps. We'll go ahead and arm the speed brake. Thank you to the passengers once again for their patience, wearing the seatbelt the entire flight. It is extremely cold. Was minus 10 earlier, approximately. Now it's minus 8, so it's warming up, but still absolutely freezing. Wind 50 degrees, 50. At approximately, we do not know. It just says nil in knots. Temperature in Fahrenheit 18 degrees in case you're from America. Very good welcome to you. Hope you've been enjoying the content and the flight so far. Hope to do some more of these in the future. Preferably with different aircraft. 777's fantastic. We can use a 737. I've not flown one of them in a long time. Even an Airbus, but I'm not too keen on them. To be quite honest, I prefer the yoke rather than the big double-handed yoke rather than the single-handed yoke at the side, or joystick should I say. Give it another notch of flaps. We are below our recommended height of 5,200. When we reach that checkpoint, we are going to be able to reach below 3,200 by the time we get on approach. Approximately 20 miles out, nautical miles out. We have an issue with the system is telling us we're at 2,500 feet. We are at 4,000 according to our altitude indicator. Go back onto weather. We do have the correct pressure settings. We don't have an airport map. So when we get onto the localizer, which is this thing here, we need to press localizer on our autopilot panel or control panel. When we're on the localizer, that is, and then when we get close to the glide slope, we can press approach. I'm not going to be flying this with autopilot. I will use the localizer switch and the approach switch, but I will not be using autopilot. As I keep telling you, the route manager on the map doesn't seem to line up, so that tells me there's not really going to be a correct approach. We are on track with ours, but then if you look closer, we go quite annoyingly, we don't even go toward the airport at one point. We're sort of supposed to be on 30, but 30 is there and we're way off to the left, so this is 100% a manual approach. If we rely on the autopilot, we will end up crashing into the tower. Okay, we're going to stick our landing lights on. Got our other lights on, check. Flaps are down. We don't need our gear, but we can decrease our speed to 220 and descend to approximately 3,000 feet. At a rate of 800 feet a minute. Giving us an indication for 1,000 feet. Our altimeter seems to be set correctly according to local pressure, but the reading on the altimeter is not correct. Or maybe it is correct. Okay, we are coming to the localizer. We're going to press localizer. Approximately 1 minute. We are below 3,200 and 5,200 feet respectively. Glide slope, at which point we need to engage the approach button. So we go over when we're on the glide slope or near to it. Before it, we press approach. As I said, the approach and glide slope is not going to be flown by the computer or the airline. We would usually do our call outs and our radio calls by now, but we haven't got ATC. That's another benefit of Flightgear. Actually, you're not forced to engage with the ATC. I suppose you aren't in other games, but at least in this one, there's no issue with concern yourself about getting told off for taking off when you shouldn't, for example. I'm going to go ahead and stick another notch of flaps and slow ourselves down to approximately 180 knots. Landing speed is probably going to be 170. Just because we're fully loaded, we go back onto our fuel, weight and payload. We can see we have 8 crew on board, which is great. We've got plenty of people working in the cabin, keeping an eye on passengers. A full economy, 56 in business and 19 in first class. 356 souls in total. Our gross weight is 461,515 pounds. Max takeoff weight, we're below that. We are below our maximum landing weight. There's another way to calculate it, but I'm not going to do it at night now because it takes considerable time sometimes. Less than 1 minute to the localizer, and it's just started to rain. As expected, I was predicting a overcast with rain, and it's hit absolutely spot on. Not ideal, of course, but not the worst weather in the world. This should make for a fairly interesting landing. In the background, you got Prague City. Welcome to Prague, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to fly you. I'm not actually there yet, but we're pretty much over the city. It's snow. See, they got the castle in the background. You got all the bridges. You can see Karlov Most, the famous castle on the hill, which is a lovely place to visit. All very familiar. This is a manual approach. We'll engage the autopilot for now, but then when we get closer, like now, I'm going to disengage it. We'll keep the auto throttle on and bring it back to 160-70, just because we're slightly heavier. Remember that the aircraft itself is going to take a considerable amount of time to stop, and it's going faster than I wanted, so we'll bring it back to 160 and deploy another notch of flaps. Manual flying, ladies and gentlemen. Please be prepared for a potential balls up. Thank you very much, computer. We're at 1,000 feet. Call out. We may be a little slow. Increase that to 165. We're going to bring both notches of flaps. My original prediction of 170 was probably spot on. Configure gear, we haven't even got the gear down. That's embarrassing. Prepare to disengage the autopilot entirely, which will include the auto throttle. Going down at approximately 800 feet. Clear runway, slightly high. Okay, we're going to disengage that, and we're going to bring our auto throttle off, and we're going to idle or reduce the engines manually. A late landing. Smooth touchdown, we engage the reverse thrusts. Full blast, full speed. Speed brakes extended. Slightly off to the right on the runway. Okay, we're below 50. Reduce that to idle. Thank you very much for the landing. Continue to the terminal whilst retracting flaps whilst on the runway. Go ahead and make sure everything on here is disengaged so we don't engage it whilst we're on the ramp. You have clicked the disengage button. Go ahead and turn on our taxi lights and disengage or turn off our landing lights. Taxi out of the turnout. Welcome to Prague. We should be at the terminal in approximately 2 minutes. Apologies, I keep saying the same thing. We don't have a gate number. It's quite busy on the ramp. There's a gate 3 on the right. We'll continue for now. We'll continue forward. There should be an empty space just up ahead. We don't want to run out of speed whilst we're moving over. Ryanair, Czech Airlines, very nice to see. A variety of aircraft on the ramp and ready to pick up and drop off passengers. I'm not keen on flying in any other aircraft other than a Boeing. Let me know what you prefer. Do you prefer Boeing or Airbus? And if you've flown on Ryanair, I assume if you're from the UK you will have flown from Ryanair at one point. It depends what you like. If you're someone who could afford a better airline like British Airways, and that's understandable. I haven't flown with British Airways. That's a fantastic view. Welcome to Prague. Václav Havel Airport, Praha. We'll go ahead and taxi to the end. Make sure we're below 10 knots for this turn. I'm still amazed at the physics on Flightgear. The physics, the detail, the weather. You'd think this was a paid game. Completely free. Completely. We park up for a perfect landing. Brakes on. We'll go through the rundown checklist very quickly. Lights off. APU generator on. Disengage the fuel pumps or turn them off. So there'll be a lack of fuel with the engines, which should stop them. Turn our window heat off. APU should be on. Turn the engines off by cutting the fuel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with British Airways and welcome to Prague. It's been a fantastic flight and thank you for being here, thank you for watching.